So, you want to replace the valve stem seals on your 1982 GL1100 Honda Goldwing motorcycle. And you're pretty much all set here. You have the valve covers are off. You've removed the rocker assembly and you removed the camshaft as well. So the whole trick now is to get the valve springs off so that you can replace the seals underneath. And I bought one of these things, the overhead valve spring removal tool, and it didn't work for me. I tried another one over here. It didn't work either. So I devised my own method to get the job done, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. The other thing you're going to need, of course, is the new valve seals, which are still available from Honda. I like to use original parts. And I actually got those at the automotive dealer because the Honda automotive dealer, they were a little bit cheaper than I could buy them from the motorcycle dealer. And the other thing that you have to have already done is you've got rope. This is a good little trick. I learned this off one of the forums somewhere, but you fill the cylinders with rope. And this is a very flexible rope. It's about a 1/4 inch diameter, cotton covered, and I've threaded it into the spark plug holes. I threaded it through straws because it's easier to thread through the straw that way. The holes are down there a little bit. And then rotate the crankshaft. Well, I guess this is actually the alternator bolt, but you snug up the piston against the rope to make sure that when you remove the valve keepers here, that the valve doesn't fall into the cylinder. You don't want that to happen. And I've done it many times now, and I'm telling you that valve stem stays perfectly right where you want it. So what you need for my method to get this job done, and it's going to work very, very nicely, you'll see. I went to the local hardware store, lumber store, and I picked up a chunk of 2x3, I guess this is spruce. And it's about 20 inches long. I cut the end of it a little bit on an angle like that. And I found an old bicycle wrench. Now I picked this wrench because it's flat and it's easy to mount on this 2x3. And I just extend it just a little bit over beyond the end of the wood so that most of the force applied to the wrench, it's actually very little. It's only on the end. Most of the force that you're going to be applying is through this big block of wood. And it's spruce, it's very strong, it's not going to let you down. And I mounted this wrench onto the back of the wood here with some 4 Robertson screws. Yeah, we use Robertson screws here in Canada. Really nice to work with. The 2 screws here at the front really just prevent the wrench from sliding from one side or the other. And it's these screws here at the back. I've put a couple washers on them to hold the back of the wrench in place when we're applying heavy force on this end. And I've also drilled a couple holes here. These are 1/4 inch holes. And they're spaced roughly 5/8 of an inch from each edge here. And these holes are also, what is it, 3 1/8 inches from the end of the wood. And yeah, this so that's this part of the thing. Then I went out and got this. Now these are a couple eye bolts, and they're on a 12-inch by 1/2 inch threaded rod. And really, you don't need a threaded rod. All you really need is any solid 1/2 inch seems to work well. Solid piece of rod. Put these eye bolts on here like this. Now you don't really need, these eye bolts are 5 inches long. Really all you need is about 3 inches, but this is what I used. And these 2 bolts here on the end, these are a couple bolts that are right off of the rocker assembly. This is 2 of the 6 bolts that you use to remove the rocker assembly. That's all they are. And I've fastened those bolts onto the threaded rod. That's just a piece of coat hanger that I've wrapped around there a couple times. and twisted it to hold it in place. And the fact is, it doesn't have to be a really secure. Coat hanger wire is plenty strong enough for this application, and I'll show you why, because really, you're not really applying too much force on the coat hanger wire at all. So here's the basic setup required to get the job done. I've mounted the whole assembly here on the head, and we've snugged up. We're working on this cylinder, so we've snugged up the piston against the number 2 cylinder here. We've snugged it up to make sure this valve, when we take the spring off, doesn't fall into the cylinder. And I've mounted the threaded rod here. You can see it's mounted across the bottom, and we've used one of the rocker assembly mounting holes here and threaded the bolt right into the same hole it came out of, really. And same thing on the other side. I'm just using one on each end. And once again, the threaded rod is mounted on the bottom, and really most of the force on this assembly when we're using it is going to be, well, kind of in this direction. So the coat hanger that I've used is really just to keep the threaded rod close to this bolt head so that it can't slip off the end here. But there's really very little force at all on the coat hanger wire. Most of the force is this way. Now the other thing, I've selected the length of these, adjusted these nuts so that the length of this thing, so that the wrench will sit nice and flat on the top of the valve retainer there. Just start pulling up on our big long lever here, and that exposes the collets. Take our little magnetic device here. Where are we? Come on. There's one. And just a sec here. And there's the other collet. They're both off. Slowly release this. Move it out of the way. And we can take off one valve spring. And you should note too, by the way, that the turns that are closest together on both valve springs go closest to the head. Okay, so there's two valve springs here. We'll take them both off. And now it's easy to see. Here's the valve seal. And the valve is, you can't push that in. The rope is pushing against it from the other side. So we're just going to clean this off, take the old valve seal off, and we'll put the new valve seal on in a moment. I have the new seal. I've put just a little bit of clean engine oil on the shaft, on the valve stem here, to make sure the seal isn't damaged. And we'll just slip this on here. And it kind of snaps into place. There we go. And now, valve springs. And the turns that are closest together go closest to the head, and I've already confirmed that with the inner one as well. So we'll just slip those there. Bring our tool over. Let's get this here. There we go. There's one little collet, or keeper as they sometimes call them. Put that there. And I just use a little screwdriver to kind of slide it into place. There we go. That's one. I hope you found this video worthwhile and useful. And that's all I have for now.